Thank you all for coming. We'll start with the curriculum committee meeting. There is no signed up public comment today. So we will begin with our science curriculum update.
Thank you.
Welcome, by the way.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good evening. I would love to talk a little bit tonight about our science curriculum update. We've been doing a lot of exciting things in science to get ready and prepared for our integration of the Pennsylvania Science, Technology, Engineering, and Environmental Literacy and Sustainability Standards. So I was just going to walk everyone through kind of our progress thus far and the things that we've been doing over the last few years to kind of get all set and integrated there.
Can I just interrupt for a second? I want to welcome you. Well, we met the other day.
Oh, yes.
At the tour of Diver, but we welcome Christine, and she's a great addition. And I guess this is your first public presentation for us?
This is. Thank you so much.
So welcome, and we're glad to have you on the team.
Thank you very much. So yes, a lot of this work began in July of 2022 when Pennsylvania adopted the new standards, which are known as the Science, Technology, and Engineering, Environmental Literacy, and Sustainability Standards. During the summer and fall of 2022, Penridge teachers and administrators began unpacking these new standards and looking for aligned curriculum materials. In the spring of 2023, the middle school science teachers piloted a discovery education curriculum with our previous science supervisor. The teacher consensus coming out of that pilot was that it did not meet our needs for the district, so they were moving in a different direction. Beginning in the summer and fall of 2023, the teachers and administrators of the Penridge district continued to align ourselves with the science standards and attended BIU trainings on the Science, Technology, Engineering, Environmental Literacy, and Sustainability Standards.
What is BIU?
The BCIU.
Oh, sorry, Bucks County.
Oh, Bucks, got it. Okay.
Have it on here, yeah.
Thought it was a new one.
My apologies.
No, that's all right.
In February of 2024, the Bucks County IU had a Pennsylvania Steels Vendor Fair in which 21 vendors presented their new curriculum materials in line with our Pennsylvania Science, Technology, and Engineering, Environmental Literacy, and Sustainability Standards. Penridge teachers and administrators were there in attendance and were able to view the products, recommending their top choices for further review by our district. In March 2024, we invited 4 vendors to our curriculum review, which took place on March 28th for grades 6 through 8 materials. And the vendors that we had at the vendor review included Twig Science, Carolina, Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, and No Adam. So these were the presentations that took place on March 28th, where the vendors presented their materials in depth, and teachers in our district, members of one member of the board, administrators, and parents were in attendance.
Thank you for attending.
Yes.
How many people were on the committee? About?
Almost 25.
20?
Yeah. We had a very good showing. A lot of interest from our teachers at the middle school level for the new
I
curriculum.
attended, and it was fabulous. It's like the amount of teachers you had. Elementary, I even talked to I was introduced to the high school supervisor. The middle school, their engagement, like they're wanting to really want to know how to better prepare our children. It was amazing. I was just so happy to be there and just absorb and listen. I was able to hear 2 fully and then another one.
Yeah.
It was just enlightening to see these educators. I saw my son's teacher. It was just fabulous. I just feel like we most certainly have like the best teachers and staff. It was just a wonderful, I loved it.
I agree. It was a really wonderful meeting of the minds, if you will. A lot of great energy in the room and real excitement over the new standards and what they're doing for us, which is kind of bringing science to life for students and really allowing them to think more critically about how they're interacting with the world and how they really do have the ability to analyze and just experience science in the classroom. So we're very enthusiastic about it. I'm so happy you were there to see that.
Could you give a brief explanation of what's changing and what and you just started that.
Certainly.
Is that later?
No,
or anything?
absolutely.
But yeah, I think the public.
So traditionally, I
literally
think,
just wrote that down.
traditionally, we know that science can often be looking for that correct answer, or that one response that, everyone's kind of used to seeing on even on our PSSA exams. There is a true answer, and what the STEEL science standards are trying to help us develop are analytical and critical thinkers who, when presented with information, can form their own opinions and support their own arguments. At the Bucks County IU STEEL's training, we experienced a wonderful opportunity to kind of look at the direction assessment was going. And so one of the questions that they presented had evidence in a data table chart. It kind of talked a little bit about a scenario, and it allowed students, it didn't give away the answer, it allowed students to take the pieces of information that supported their argument and come up with that claim, evidence, and reasoning. And so what we're seeing a lot more of are those independent thinkers where there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer, but for students to be able to identify their claim, support it with evidence, and then go ahead and kind of support with their reasoning. It really is such a skill-based experience for them and for teachers too, that it really opens up a lot for them to kind of live in what they're noting as the phenomenon-based learning. So everything is going to connect to the real world and really try to draw meaning into what would be, a standard science experience. And I think we saw that at the vendor fair, is a lot of these curriculum companies have really capitalized on that phenomenon, and they have real engaging videos that are showing volcanic eruptions and volcanologists studying in the field and asking students to come along with them and look at this data and what are they thinking. And so those conversations and that conversation-rich science classroom, and where analytical thinking and stating a claim and kind of finding that evidence along the way helps students to not be so nervous about maybe making a mistake or thinking something incorrectly and finding out later it's wrong, because that's really a natural part of science, is that we remain curious and we try to find out more about the world around us. So that's a lot of what we're looking to do for our students here.
How much of a departure is it from what we currently have in the curriculum?
It looks like in our curriculum, a lot has been going on to update our curriculum along the way in line with NGSS, which came out many years ago. But in terms of the Pennsylvania STEEL standards and looking at these curriculum vendors, it allows us to kind of identify what might be a very comprehensive curriculum from start to finish, looking, really this vendor fair is taking us with the 6 through 8 lens, but we had representation from our other levels within the district trying to create that long-term longevity and consistency with the curriculum. So the phenomenon-based learning tends to be kind of that primary piece that we see within the standards, and with how the vendors are interpreting the standards. But a lot of analytical and critical thinking is taking place in our classrooms every day.
And I could just add on to that, because we've been preparing
Yes.
for this for a while with next generation science standards, which Eric Daney, previous science supervisor, did a lot of that work. Pennsylvania, when they did their adoption, most states are just NGSS, but for us, it's STEELS, because PA added environmental literacy and sustainability, so that makes our state different. So our standards are different from the typical NGSS, although they're included, right?
Yeah.
And in addition to that, we're really focused on 3-dimensional learning, so it's not as much the what. Phenomenon-based really gives you the what to do the exploration. It's really more about the how.
Yeah.
And thinking about kids as scientists. What do real scientists do? And they journal, and they make predictions, and they test things out, and they're not always right. Things like that, that they're trying to develop different types of thinking. But yes, PA has added their own.
Thank you.
Of course. And so just looking kind of ahead for what we're experiencing right now in the spring of 2024, we are currently reviewing the curriculum materials that were presented to us by the vendors. We are hoping, or we will be finalizing our curriculum choice for Penrose School District in the coming weeks. And we are going to continue the ongoing professional development for the STEEL standards, which includes that three-dimensional link for three-dimensional learning, which kind of integrates both the content, the cross-cutting concepts, and
Which is interdisciplinary,
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about.
and the skills. So it's a multifaceted. That's why they're referring to it as three-dimensional. And then in the summer of 2024, we will look to purchase curriculum materials and for the 2024-25 launch, and then provide ongoing professional development for our teachers and administrators on the new materials.
And I'll just add that, just as a reminder, we did budget for the middle school science curriculum materials last year, but we didn't use it. So what we're hoping for, as Christine is talking about, is to select this year and move forward. So that's our goal. So we'll be back, Christine will be back to do a presentation on the selection.
Well, what about the rest of the grades? How does that?
So middle school will go first.
Okay.
Elementary school is focused on social studies, and we cannot give social studies and science, but we had elementary teachers there and elementary principal there because we're most interested in a K-12 resource. We do not want a different resource for our elementary students. So once the professional development starts next year in middle school, then we can start onboarding elementary teachers. So that in 2 years, you'll have a K-8.
And does that meet the requirements of the state? Or how does?
It does.
It does, the standards, yes.
Yeah.
And for this committee, you're doing a rubric and all the usual.
Yes, I had a lovely support, and we adopted the
Color coded, very organized. I loved it. Yes, folder and all. It was fabulous.
Yes. So right now we are looking through the rubric data and compiling that into our spreadsheet. So we're looking for the reactions of all and the voting of all of our representation there.
So to be clear then, the teachers aren't writing the curriculum, they're just looking at the 4 programs and voting, and then that's what's gonna happen. They're gonna choose one and go from there.
The curriculum's written. The curriculum's
Through-
in Atlas.
Based through the,
Through the standards, through NGSS. Any kind of curriculum that you
Right.
see in Atlas that we will adjust,
you mean just like the big ideas and essential questions?
could be.
That's what's
Could
in
be
Atlas.
anything that's in Atlas that's approved. If we change anything, we come back here.
Right.
And we'll adjust it and we'll bring that here for your,
That's more though of like a syllabus, not necessarily like the curriculum. So I'm assuming it's just looking at the 4 programs, and then like a lot of the meat of the curriculum and the pacing and what you're going to be using is through the program, the scope and sequence of the program. The teachers aren't writing the curriculum.
the curriculum is what is in Atlas, so that is the content, right? It's the standards, it's the content, right, of what they're going to teach. It's the skills of how they're going to teach it. It's the list of resources. We do not share the assessments, obviously.
Right.
But that's all what's in Atlas. The books, the textbooks, are considered resources.
Mhm.
Will there be additional information on the topics listed in Atlas? Yes, there always is. You can't put all the information in Atlas,
Right,
but
and
you'll
the-
know what the what
The main
is.
curriculum is from the programs, it's within the resource. And
There's
like,
additional information in the resource, but the curriculum's been written. It's in Atlas. Middle school science curriculum is written.
Resource is a tool.
right.
Resource is not the
Right.
curriculum
But the-
itself.
but I don't consider
Curriculum
what's in
comes
Atlas
from our
curriculum.
teachers.
Right, but I don't consider curriculum what's in Atlas. It's like your big ideas, your essential questions, but it's not like the meat, it's not curriculum. I want, like, yes, it has the standards, but standards are standards. And then it has the big ideas, essential questions, it's like points, but it's not the curriculum.
Because the curriculum is what's to be taught. It's not the
Right.
day-to-day of what every teacher is doing
Right,
in the
that would be like
classroom.
your lesson plan and all those things, I get that.
Right. So what are you asking that
I'm just saying that
add
this,
is the
like,
question.
when the
If-
teachers are meeting together, you're saying that they're picking the program, but right now what's staying in Atlas is staying in Atlas. This program is automatically just gonna match up to what's in Atlas right now.
It's just like in social studies when we're looking at that, there's going to be adjustments, right? There will be adjustments, but we consider what we put in Atlas our curriculum. And then the textbooks, or whatever other books we have, we consider them as our resource to support the curriculum. But there's always additional information you're gonna get from textbooks that's not written in Atlas. But you'll know what the topics are.
So then too, it says that you'll be voting on the program coming up this spring shortly. There'll be a decision on the program of choice out of the 4.
Yeah.
And then you'll have professional development on that, the one that's chosen. When will that take place?
August most likely, if
So,
not sooner.
okay.
Depends on how.
But you're
we do
launching
that
it,
year.
you're launching it for this upcoming year, correct?
For the
24?
24, 20.
So that's this fall, right?
Correct.
Okay. So, I mean, there was a lot of kickback from everything with the social studies, and this is following suit of that. There's no pilot here for this. So there was a lot of pushback on everything with social studies for high school last year. So did the teachers bring up any of concerns for that during the committee? That there won't be professional development until the fall when they're rolling it out?
I didn't hear anything. They are chomping at the bit.
Yeah.
They already piloted a program last year. We have been discussing the new standards. We have had probably the best representation in the county at the Steeles BCIU workshops. Our tables are larger. Everybody is interested in this, and we are ready. And middle school, above all, they are ready for it. They've been exploring. There's a open source called Open SciEd. I don't know how familiar people are with that kind of thing, but these teachers have been working really hard to explore. They know we need to move. You're going to hear the achievement scores of the district, and science has always been, we've always done very well. We will not continue to do well if we do not move forward with this. The assessments are going to change. The PSSA is going to change for science. It's going to move from 4th grade to 5th grade, and the way they assess kids is going to change, and we have to be prepared for that. And
Based upon the
we really
standards.
are prepared. Middle school is prepared. I would never do that at elementary when we have to go through social studies. And the first year of implementation is start implementing, and we're going to support you. And we will have professional development, and we will have the support of our supervisor and coaches. So I would say, with no uncertainty, that middle school teachers are ready. Every one of them came, so.
When do the assessments change?
Not this year, the following year. There's going to be field tested questions this coming year.
So it
And then-
changes and it shifts grades.
Yes, it'll
Okay.
shift from 4th to 5th.
Okay.
And the Keystone questions are going to change. So we don't know exactly how, because nobody gave them to us yet, but we do know that they are. And it's our responsibility to prepare the students. And we're ready for it. And if I thought for a minute we weren't,
How do we avoid the situation we had in the past where we were teaching things after the test that was on the test, so they did very badly? How do we avoid that situation this time? I mean, I hate to teach to the test, but that hurt our scores. It wasn't the kids' fault, it was our fault. So I just want to make sure we don't repeat that.
and that has not been an issue in science as much as it has been in math.
Okay.
But that's really about scope and sequence.
But
That's
how do we
really about the
know,
when.
I mean, how do we know beforehand that we're short of it?
Well, what the state does do is give you what they call eligible content, so we do know the topics that will be tested. So they'll give you eligible content, that's where it stops. We do know that the assessments are going to be different. We have had a lot of training in this. So the sooner we start exposing our students to that, the better it is for them. So, yes, I think we're very ready for middle school.
Out of the 4 programs, which one has the most labs, hands-on labs?
The most are all lab-based.
Yeah.
Just want to know like the numbers. Like I know sometimes when you move from different science programs, like some have a lot more than others. So I was just curious.
The
If we had that
emphasis-
data.
Yeah, I understand what you're asking. The emphasis of the STEEL standards focuses on having students doing science, if you will, so always interacting with hands-on activities. So I can say that, and maybe you can speak to it as well. We saw an emphasis, I think, from all of the 4 curriculums, and that's maybe what stood out at the vendor fair, is there was an emphasis on students completing investigations and hands-on activities within every unit that was constructed. So, investigations can look different with each of the vendors, but I think each of them made a point specifically to say that students are doing science because that's a part of what the standards ask us to do.
Science is process-based skills building rather than
Yeah.
science as, here's the information.
And that's really one of the shifts when we talked about how does science look different in the classroom. Our facilitators at those presentations talked about how the teacher becomes the facilitator and not, the instructor so much, where it's the students who are doing the experiments or collecting the information and data from multiple sources. That's another thing. And really being able to discuss with one another, having that discourse with one another about what they're seeing. So that's happening on a daily basis.
And they all are doing the CER, and CER is how
Yes.
students make a claim, provide the evidence, and then provide reasoning.
Mm-hmm.
So they all do that.
Yeah.
Right, I think, but that's been around for, I think, a long time now.
Yes,
That
and
changed, yeah.
it's really important, right? And now they have embedded it in just about everything,
Yeah.
so we're happy to see it.
Yeah. Yes, I'll be back.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate the information.
So the next will be middle school reading updates with Ms. Sarah Ricky.
No, poor Sarah.
Lack of an arm. So I'm here to talk about just a few updates that we would like to make to the 7th grade analysis of fiction and nonfiction or reading as our reading course and the 8th grade course. So I'm going to do 8th grade first because we only have one full year course in 8th grade, so it's a little easier to start from 8th grade, and then we'll talk about 7th grade separately. So there are 2 units that we are recommending we update. The first one is a unit titled Individual Responsibility, and what we're recommending is right now there's one resource, one text that students read, Becoming Muhammad Ali, and that is a new text that we brought this year, and we are recommending adding another option for teachers to choose between 2 texts so that they can make the most appropriate choice for the students that they have in front of them in 8th grade based on their reading levels as well as their interests. So they're both novels that are written in verse, which is what this unit exposes our students to, so they both meet that requirement. They are slightly different in reading level, and that will enable our teachers to better meet the needs of the kids that they have in front of them, because we're seeing right now in implementing this, the first choice, or the only choice that we have right now, Becoming Muhammad Ali, is a little bit higher than what all of our students can access independently, and teachers are having to differentiate a lot more than what we typically would see if we had another option to meet the needs. So some classes might read one, some might read the other, or they might split the class and have 2 groups going at the same time based on the needs that they have. So that's where this recommendation is coming from. It's just adding another option, not removing anything.
How does that process work where you pick a new book like that? Was there a committee, is there a group?
So this
Where
was
did that
with
come
the reading teachers who wrote the curriculum throughout the last 2 years, who I have come up here and represent in the fall as well. We have gotten back together 4 times, I want to say, 4 half days throughout the year since the updates were made in September and October to the courses to continue to plan the courses, because they were already going once we updated them in the fall, as well as to make sure that the updates that we made were working for the course and the students that we have. And so these recommendations are really coming out of what the teachers are seeing in real time right now through the courses.
I mean, how many books were you throw out, like, bunch of different books and then you narrow, I mean, it's.
So we probably went through, I don't know, 12 novels in verse from the beginning of when we started this course to this recommendation here, at least, probably. Okay, so that's this unit, and then the second unit is called The Nature of Living Things. This is a unit that comes at the end of the course. It's a student choice unit right now. There are 2 text options, Black Beauty and PAX. The whole unit is focused right now on humans' interaction with living things and our responsibility to and between living things, which is fine as a unit. But as we have gone through this course, we really made the other units genre-based, and so we asked students to navigate 4 different types of text: an illustrated novel, historical fiction, multiple narrators or dual narrators, and then a novel in verse. And so the recommendation is actually to open up this literature circle unit to have complete student choice in what text they are reading, but they must pick one of the 4 genres that they already were guided in understanding the strategies for, so that it's really more of a culminating unit that matches the rest of the course. It gives a better arc to kind of a summative way to end the course, rather than making it a completely separate unit. So there would be no recommended text or resource in this unit. It would be the students going to the library, working with our librarians in the middle schools to pick a text that falls into one of those 4 genres, and then they would be grouped with their peers based on the genre of text rather than the same text.
They will be able to just choose, or there'll be a selection of books for them to choose from?
They will be able to choose as long as it fits into one of the 4
The genres.
genres, yes.
Is that
Yep.
the only qualification? Did they pick a short book or a long,
Yes, they can pick a short book or a long book. I mean, they will be guided by the librarians and their teachers to, make sure that what they do choose allows them to engage in the unit and with their peers in the
there's
literature
some
circle.
requirement?
So there's
So
parameters,
there's approval.
right? But they'll pick what they can, what they're interested in and what they can read.
Is it based off like their reading level as well?
That's one parameter that the teachers and the librarians would guide them, but we don't ever say, no, you can't read that because it's above where you might be
Or
tested.
below, like I'm thinking more like it's really low, and that like they
But-
might choose a book that's really low, and maybe they should push themselves more for like a higher.
Sure, and if that is the case, then the teacher and librarian who will know that student would make that recommendation. But it's not, you must pick from these because this is your level, right? There's a lot of discussion about how we pick text and why we pick text and how interest is involved in that and reading level is involved in that and purpose, right? So if I know maybe I have to engage with my peers about a text I'm reading independently and I have to use strategies because it's about historical fiction, that might make me want to pick a different type of text than if I was just reading it on my own independently and I didn't have to talk about it, or I didn't have to present something on it, or I didn't have to talk to someone else like Christine who read a different book but in the same genre, right? So that goes back to the purpose of reading and then what you're doing with it, which is really what we're trying to also give these 8th grade students an opportunity to do before they get to the high school, where they are responsible for a lot of that text choice on their own.
Before moving on to 7th grade too, the text part of the individual responsibility, like I get having, another option for teachers to choose from, but the legs out for the book now that they're doing is, and I could be wrong, I just did a quick Google search, is like 10-10, and then the house arrest is 6-10. So that is a huge gap, going down, like even 10-10 could potentially be 4th grade level. And are we saying like that, obviously like they did it this year and maybe some of the students it was too high of a level to work through. So is that something that like we need to be looking into further as to why we have to drop, or why 8th grade it's a book that's potentially on the end of 4th grade level year? That's many years to
So-
kind of.
So lifestyle levels are a range, right? So they go, they cross grade levels. But there are also interest levels. So house arrest, for example, is a lower lexile level, but it's grades 6 through 8 because of the content and developmentally appropriate nature of the text like that.
I was
Whereas
gonna ask
Muhammad
that.
Ali spans 3rd grade to
Okay.
7th grade, where you're looking at different ways of kind of evaluating a text. If we just go based on a straight reading level, it might seem like it's a much lower text, but really, there's content in there that is more difficult to navigate or read than something else that might be at a higher lexile. So that's why I'm actually advocating for the option to have both, so that there is a spread between the two, because in 8th grade, we only have this full year course in place for students who really need more time to solidify those reading skills before they go on to the high school. So we do often have students who are identified as having a reading need and have an IEP to support that, who are in this general ed course, to push them to be in the gen ed course so that when they go to the high school, they're prepared. So that's why this 8th grade course is a little bit different than 7th, because it's kind of that in-between level. And then 8th grade English obviously is where you'll see all the grade level texts that are more of what, in line with what you're talking about, meeting those standards. But 8th grade's a little bit different in the reading.
And then the house arrest, since I knew that was my next question,
Mhm.
because it's unfamiliar to me. So saying that it's more developmentally appropriate for 6th or 8th grade, what in this story do you think is what keeps it more that middle school versus elementary? What's in it that would be potentially?
The main character, the protagonist, is a middle school boy. So right off the bat, kind of when you have a character, your main character at that level, it's generally going to be something they recommend for that same level of student. His younger brother is sick, very sick, and his medication is extremely expensive and they can't afford it. He steals a wallet to try to use the credit card to pay for the medication because his mom is struggling to do all that. He's caught and placed on house arrest for a year and has to write a journal as part of his probation, basically, and the book is his journal. And it's empathizing with different situations that you might not know when you're looking, when you're going to school and you have a peer, or why people might be motivated to do certain things. And it's his journey, his personal journey of kind of going through that and having to also express himself in writing and reflect on that, which for a 3rd grader, probably not appropriate to read through, but for a 6th through 8th grader who could write the same types of things, it's very accessible. Are there any more questions about 8th grade? Because those are the only changes for that course. Okay, so 7th grade, again, we have the full year 7th grade option that some students take, and then we have a half year option as well. All 7th grade students are taking one of these 2 options. Okay, so they're separate courses, and there's some separate recommendations here. So right now we have a unit called Game-Changing Decisions in the half-year course. The text or the book for that unit is The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. The recommendation that I'm making is twofold for this. It's to pull this unit completely out of the half-year course and replace it with our Building Bridges unit, which is in our full-year course, because it's completely based on nonfiction. We don't have a nonfiction focus in the half-year course right now. We were kind of just supplementing in the other units. And we have found that it's too much of a gap without having a targeted unit in that half-year course. So this would be a better way to support students in navigating the nonfiction. And so by doing that, that leaves The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde without a place, which we found value in the rigor of that for a lot of our students. And for the teachers to be able to work with students within the language and the vocabulary and the format of that. And so the recommendation for next year is to take that text and move it into the Accelerated English 7 course. And we would add that into a unit called A Look into the Future, where students are actually writing their own science fiction at the end of the unit. And it would become a mentor text in addition to the other texts in there, like Ray Bradbury short stories are in there, for example. So it's really taking this, moving the text to the English course, so students will still have it in Accelerated, and then replacing this whole unit with a nonfiction unit, which is already in the full year course, fully developed, and we are doing it now actually with the full year course. Okay, questions about that one before that unit? So that's just half year. In full year, the same unit exists. There are two options as the book. It's The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Who takes the full year versus everyone takes the full year? Or-
Everyone takes a reading.
A-
Most students take the half-year
The half year,
option,
okay.
and then students who are recommended for, again, needing a little bit more of that strategy work, more targeted to
Okay,
that.
just one.
So there are currently two books that are teacher choice options in this unit. The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the abridged version, is one option, and then Game Changer is the second option. Given the reading level of the students that we have in the full year course and their ability to independently engage with a text, which is what we really want them to be able to do to then apply the strategies and support them, we have found that even the abridged version of that text is a little bit too difficult. And so we're recommending that Game Changer is the only option for that unit for the full year course only.
And how long is the unit?
That unit is about, I wanna say four or 5 weeks, depending,
Okay,
yes,
So it's one portion.
yes.
Yeah, it's helpful when you present these courses to give a little information of who's it for and stuff like that. Just, sometimes I don't realize which course it is.
Sure.
That's very helpful.
So when there's been more than one option, some students were picking it and weren't getting through successfully.
So this was a teacher choice unit, which means the teacher would
Okay,
pick which
okay.
text or both would be appropriate, and those who were starting to use the abridged version, even just kind of introducing that, or finding the vocabulary and just the dense text was really difficult for those students to navigate independently at all, and so they couldn't then engage with it independently to be able to show that they can do that strategy work, and so the teachers were almost pulling them through it rather than being able to give them the opportunity to read it and understand it and analyze it, and that's really the goal of the reading course, and so that's why it's a better fit in the English course in general. Okay, and then this unit is for both courses. So currently, we have, our first unit is called A Look into the 60s. It's a small research unit where students independently research different elements of the 60s before they go into the second unit, which has the book The Outsiders as the instructional resource. Because we are recommending that all students engage in that nonfiction unit where they're reading Heroes of the Holocaust, so all 7th graders will get that. We are then advocating that instead of researching the 60s, we move that unit to prior to reading Heroes of the Holocaust, and they do research regarding those topics because we found there's a lot of gaps in understanding and knowledge about that time period and all of the things that go along with understanding then the nonfiction that you're going to engage in. And this book that is nonfiction, but it's written as a narrative. And so that's a big difference between how we typically read nonfiction. So this gives us a better opportunity to bolster both units with more nonfiction, different articles, databases, students researching independently and understanding what they're then going to read in the larger unit. So not much changes other than what they are researching, and then it would just move in the course. Instead of being the first unit, it would be about the third. And that would be for both half year and full year. And it would just be renamed because they're not looking into the 60s. And that is it for 7th grade. Any questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I get to turn it over to you for active.
I'm sorry.
What happened?
Oh, I had shoulder surgery 2 weeks ago. A couple tears in there. So I'm one winging it for about a month.
Oh, we're live, okay. All right, but for activities, we have one thing on the agenda tonight, and that's the Penridge Achievement and Growth Data presented by Mr. Palmer.
Thank you very much. Our presentation this evening comes at a good time. I think it's typical that the district has looked at data in this kind of a time frame into February, March, and into April because we are in what we call testing season. So the PSSAs begin the week of April 22nd. So we're going to be starting there. Keystone exams begin May the 14th. So we have a nice long time, many, many weeks of testing in all of our buildings throughout the district. So I want to start with a little refresher. Mr. Barrios had said earlier about all the different kind of, people throw out acronyms and we hear lots of letters. So I want to talk a little bit about, what's happening in assessment. In the state of Pennsylvania, we know the PSSA, the Pennsylvania System of School Assessment. The federal government, under ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act of 2015, requires that students be tested in ELA and mathematics every year from 3rd to 8th grade. Additionally, students, and once again in high school, students in science, they need to be tested in each grade span. That is, they have to be tested once in elementary, once in middle, and once in high school. So the Keystone exams and the PSSA exams essentially serve as our federal mandate within the state of Pennsylvania for testing. So that is the reason that the testing exists. And what it does is it does really help us, not just to report our achievement, but to really look at how our students are doing and be able to make adjustments to improve our instruction. So the PSSA is given then, the Keystone exams are course-associated exams that are given in literature, algebra, and biology. So those are different than our PSSAs, which are grade level based exams that you take at the end of your grade level. Keystone exams are ones that you take at the end of your course. So whenever a student has algebra, whether that's in 7th grade or 8th grade or 9th grade, or even 10th grade, if a student could complete algebra, the Keystone exam is taken at the completion of that course. In addition to those measures, you'll also see something called PVAS, which is the Pennsylvania Value Added Assessment System. That is, the value added is looking at student growth, individual student growth. So they're going to compare how a student is doing as they're entering a grade level and how do they do at the end of that grade level on their PSSA exam, and they can say, okay, how did the student perform? And that is a proxy for what did the teacher add, what was the value that the teacher added, the class added, the school added, the district added to that individual student. So that's why it's that. And it's used for a number of things. It's used by the district for us to really look at how we're doing with our students, to highlight areas where students may need help, where we're doing well in that growth. And it's also something that is reported to the state of Pennsylvania and used in teacher evaluations. So teachers are evaluated based upon their students' performance on PSSA and Keystone exams. Other measures that we have the NOCTI exam. So students that are in any career and technical programs at Upper Bucks Tech School, they would take the National Occupational Competency Testing Institute exam. That's what that NOCTI stands for. And that's an industry exam. So a student in welding, they can take the welding NOCTI exam, and that is at the conclusion of their program. So after they have completed it, they're a senior, they're going to go and take that NOCTI exam, and it's both a written exam and it's performance exams evaluated by people who are evaluators. Additionally, we have advanced placement exams. I think a lot of you are familiar with those. Those are courses, again, those are exams associated with a course, and those are actually done by the College Board. College Board offers students the chance to take that exam and to pay the, I think it's $92 per exam for it. But depending upon your college, you can earn between 3 and 8 college credits. So what would an 8 college credit look like? So if you were to take AP Chemistry, which I taught for many years, a student could earn 8 college credits by getting a 4 or 5 on that AP exam at Penn State. I know that one for a fact, so I watched that one. But other courses, I mean, I think English, most of the English ones, colleges will generally only give you 3 credits for. But students also learn a tremendous amount taking college level courses in high school. So I want to walk you through what our achievement data has looked like in this past year, that is in the 2022-23 school year, because that's when we have data from, and how we've done over the last few years. So starting with our ELA, our RELA, these are the achievement scores from 22-23. You'll see the second to last column is the number of students who scored advanced or proficient combined. The final column, the green column, is the percent change from the 21-22 school year. So you'll see that in each grade level, there was an increase in the percent advanced proficient. So 3rd grade it was 8.3, down to 8th grade where it was 5.3% increase from the previous year. And I'll just show that to you graphically. What that looks like is you can all see that we have fairly good scores, then a drop during COVID, and a recovery that is taking place. I think the prediction was, and still continues to be, that it's going to take a minimum of 4 to 5 years to really bounce back from the learning losses suffered during COVID. So it's not something that you can easily jump back and make grade levels worth of growth. There was serious impact to our students across grade levels and across the state, really. This is the kind of numbers that you're going to see essentially in every district, the impact of this. Any questions about those?
Do we compare that to other districts as far as recovery or?
Okay.
One of the things that jumps out at me is we don't know what's good or bad compared to other ones. I always look at it like maybe we have a neighboring districts and put some data together to.
I'll show you a little bit.
Yeah,
We have some
I
comparisons.
mean, when we have the county, I saw the county, and I don't think we should compare ourselves to the whole county or to the state. But go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, compared to the state, our numbers are
Yeah,
very good across the board. I think it helps to like compare ourselves to our neighbors.
Yeah, I can see that.
Additionally, we can look at growth. So I talked about the PVOS numbers. So if we're looking at the PSSA for English, for ELA, comparing the top is 2022 to the bottom is 2023. So this is a measure of student growth. How was the student coming in compared to how was the student when they went out? So you'll see last year, the growth was still quite low for our students. That is below average in some cases, with the exception of 4th grade. Comparing that to this year, where all of our students across those grade levels had well above measures of growth. So every single grade showed increasing scores for our students. For mathematics, again, this is like the first slide. You'll see that the advanced proficient is in the second to last column to the right, starting with our grade 3 at the top, 75.7% advanced proficient, and you'll see all the way down at the bottom, 8th grade math, 27.7% advanced proficient. And you will see again, each of our grade levels has had an increase from the previous year. 3rd grade, 14%, all the way down to 8th grade math at 6% growth, or 6% increase in achievement
Why is the third grade so much better than eighth grade? Why is it decreasing as far as that?
That is a great question. So if we look across the last few years, so if we go back to 2018, this has been a perennial issue in terms of mathematics. Grades 6 through 8 math has been low across the state, and everyone has struggled with this. I can't say why it is. It's very challenging. There are general trends across the nation in terms of, if you look at the most recent NAEP tests and things like that, you see decreasing math scores with increasing grade level.
When you take seventh graders and eighth graders who take a Keystone and have to take a PSSA, this happens every year.
Does it happen at every
Because
school?
it's
too?
Keystone.
That's where we need that comparison. Well, I wanna see it with our neighbor.
I'm saying I have seen, and
Yeah,
yes.
I believe I'm not saying we're doing anything wrong, but it would.
No, it's continues to be a challenge for those kids. There's a lot of testing during that thing, and we're trying to simultaneously zero in on content in the Keystone exam for your top kids. Remember, the Keystone exams, you have kids taking algebra in grades 7 and 8, and some at the high school in 9. Meanwhile, they're also taking the PSSA. So it is kind of a challenge to zero in on that right at that 8th grade course. But that is certainly an area of focus for our district. Like that's why it's one of our goals to be working on that mathematics in grades 6 to 8.
So I had a question with math. So I see, when you're in 5th grade, you take math 5th grade. In 6th grade, everyone's putting that 6th grade clump math. So, for example, just speaking for my son, so in 7th grade, he did algebra. So that's a huge jump. For a lot of 6th graders that went into that algebra, they were like, this is fantastic, they're flying by. Then they get jumped into algebra and then geometry. I guess my question, would it help, and has it ever, before they go, when they're in 5th grade, when they're going into 6th, potentially not clump everyone into regular 6th grade math, and for those kids that would have advanced in 7th and have algebra, maybe have pre-algebra in 6th grade.
Great idea.
Because I know for mine in particular, I had to get him a tutor. He got it, but he just needed more. And so I thought maybe that would help, because these children are really bright that are moving up. But I didn't know what the reasoning is behind it or anything like that. But I mean, I don't know if maybe that would help. I don't know.
In a conversation earlier today, I think we needed to maybe take a look at our scope and sequence of courses. So maybe we do have a pre-algebra for 6th grade or.
Yeah, to put them in where
So
they
6th
want to.
graders all take the same?
Yes. Now, right now they all go into regular
And
6th
that's
grade math.
when you make that decision, whether it's what path.
Has 7th grade math too.
So 6th grade, there's 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, but for
Right.
example, if you're advanced after 6th grade, they bump you up. So for
Right.
example, my son got into algebra, but it would be nice for those kids, because you already know where they are with their grading, potentially to have.
Mhm.
But yes, there's 6th grade math, there's kids that go 6th grade math, 7th grade math, 8th grade math.
And we don't have an accelerated math in 6th?
Oh, no,
Okay, so we
I
don't.
think that's when they
Okay.
make the decision.
Yeah.
right.
That's typically.
And there's,
Maybe
I mean,
one.
this is a debate that is national. There are places where they won't let anyone take algebra until they're in 8th grade.
Yeah.
Like, they'll just simply say, no, you can't take it. No, I think it's nice that we can offer that. It allows kids to progress at their own pace, and that, there are kids that can certainly handle it. It's not a lot, because that if you project that out, what's that kid taking their senior year? If you're progressing through calculus and you get to, that kid's gonna have to leave to take Calc 3 somewhere or something else. So I don't know that every kid has to have it in 7th grade, but I think it's something that's worth us taking a look at. The other thing I would point out on this is we do have a recovery. Again, if you look at the learning loss, the impact of COVID, we are making strides to get us back to, in some cases, 3rd grade, above where we were before COVID. So,
And 4th grade, right? It's like,
Yeah, so the recovery,
Let's get 5 to 6.
you know, is happening, it's taking place, but the focus has gotta be, you know, across the board. There's places where we know that we had trouble before COVID, and it's that same time.
When we had the data coach, what grades was she helping with the mathematics?
She worked primarily at the high school and middle school.
Okay.
She didn't do much work at elementary. And a lot with algebra, our high school algebra students struggle with those.
In terms of growth, if we look at last year, again, grades 5 and 6 and 8 were pretty low in terms of their growth. Sorry, previous year. And then into 23, all of the grades showed an increase in growth. So though 6th grade was still low, it was increased from what the level of growth was last year. So again.
Where is that? 2023?
Yep. So
The
on,
growth?
so if you look on here, you'll see the numbers from the previous year. All of their growth has actually increased down here. But if we're looking here at grade 6 here, it was negative 14.6. This is negative 9.3.
What does the negative mean?
It means that they did not make a year's worth of growth. in
But they
that.
made less.
So they
Better,
did,
but still bad.
Poorly, yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
They did less bad.
Okay. Only 6 growth.
Yes.
They were
Less
improving, not,
Yeah, I mean, the
Still not
expectation is
improving.
they're making a year's worth of growth.
okay.
And again, these are for every individual kid. We're saying collectively as a whole, but individual kids are making growth. Some are not making growth, and for various reasons.
So if you're in the green, you made a year's growth.
Okay.
If you're in
Okay.
light blue and dark blue, you went above a year's growth.
Right.
And then
More than.
opposite applies below in yellow and red.
I mean, you didn't make them.
And that leads us to why, you know, our goals are what they are. The goals, the 2 goals for grade 3 RELA, 10% increase over 2 years, 6th to 8th grade math, 12% over 2 years, and the change are 8.3% and 10.4% respectively.
In 1 year, so.
That's in a single year. So I think we're doing quite well, and I would anticipate that when we get our scores back from this year, that we'll achieve those goals.
It'd be nice to continue that trend, right?
Yep.
Yeah, we've made some significant jumps compared to the
Yeah.
rest of the state.
So I don't see that 6th to 8th grade math goal going away.
Yeah.
I would assume that we would keep that as we go through our planning phases in the next year, that we would still want to focus in that area.
So this goal is for all levels of the grade, right? Like, we're not saying we want to get 10% better in advanced proficient category.
Just the overall 10% increase in our achievement,
Achievement
scores.
achievement scores, not the growth.
More kids advanced and proficient, total.
That
Oh, so that
percentage.
that
Okay.
rate.
The
Okay.
advanced
Okay.
proficient.
Oh, advanced and proficient.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Science, our numbers are excellent. Very, very good. We'll continue to increase them. If we look over the last several years, much less of a decrease from COVID in terms of learning loss. So our students are doing very, very well in science. And again, this is only in grade 4 and 8.
But the science is accumulated over the grade
Yes.
levels. It's not
Mhm.
just
But it's
4th
tested.
grade to 8th grade, it's all science.
And what they do for their growth is they simply project out what the growth would be. So we don't have year-to-year data, so they kind of have a regression that, you know, has a tendency, and our growth is very, very high. If you want to look at some county comparisons, so just take, if we look at the growth, which we can pull quickly, Penn Ridge has the highest growth in ELA overall at 12.38, that's very, very high in relation to the rest of the district.
Is that a normal, 4 to 8 is a normal stat or something? Where do you get that data for the,
So the growth, they're summing all the grades up, but you can't get growth from 3 to 8 because you
that's
can't
just the
see
norm?
growth in
No,
3
that's-
because
yeah.
they're just coming in.
No.
In math, still very good in terms of the rest of the county. The overall growth 1.36 if we're looking at math across grades 4 through 8. And science, the growth is excellent, top of the county in both 4 and 8. 4.99 and 8.75, I believe. Any questions about this?
So math is clearly an issue. How do we hone in on what in the world?
Well, one of the great things is
We
we
do.
have our math supervisor now
Yeah.
with us, which he has a lot of work. He had
He was here.
some,
Yeah.
but he is with us starting
He
today.
started
He started today,
Today
this
was
is
his
Happy
first
day.
day.
so it's great, and that is gonna be his focus.
So the focus of math, I could just add that,
Yeah.
has been, and that's why you're seeing these growth scores, is on small group instruction. And the instructional coaches are in the classroom, helping teachers use small group instruction as a strategy, and mainly that's happening in math. So that was the one intervention that we really focused on and got the benefit from last year to this year in mathematics, which is continual.
I saw that, some of the visits where they pull out,
Yep.
you line of the class so that the ones who are advanced get a little different, and the ones they spend more time with the people who need that help, it brings them up. And I thought it was an excellent example of how to bring everybody up and just not leave people behind. So like, it was-
Yeah, I'm glad you got to
they
see
all,
that.
every teacher is thankful for
I
that.
have a lot of good feedback too about it. I will say that like we do have to work in math, but the point I was making, like compared to where we made a significant jump in this last year in math, which I feel like is reflective of some of the changes that were happening. And I think if we even give that some time, we'll keep seeing that jump. Because compared to the rest of the state, like even in third grade, we had almost a 10% increase. Like that's a lot.
And when you have 25
Yeah.
kids in a class, it's hard. I mean, it's hard to keep them, especially when there's different levels, especially. at the
So
early
wait,
first.
we're still low, but we're making headway. Like I'm encouraged by the jump from last year to this year. I think is pretty impressive.
For the higher grades, I am intentionally leaving out the Keystone exams for right now because if we looked at last year, the last grades we have for the Keystone are the seniors of last year. So those seniors, 23, they would have had, because this follows them along, if you work that backwards, those were the kids that were like exempt from COVID. So those kids would have had it maybe in algebra in 7th or 8th grade. Those were the years where we didn't have data for them. So at this point, when we're taking our Keystones, beginning this May, we'll be getting that data back in July. I think we'll be able to come back with some intelligent information for you that makes sense. Right now, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to look at that. It is really the most challenging one to look at because it does follow the kids. So some kids have algebra in 7 or 8. Some kids are going to have, science. They might have one grade or another. So it's a little difficult to track, but also we have retesting for that. So you kind of have to follow that data.
Tell by grade how a student performed. The 7th graders who were advanced, and you get their score separate from the 8th graders. Right?
Yeah, we have to basically filter all that out to look at how those kids perform.
Yeah.
One thing to note is North, I believe, middle school last year had 100% advanced proficient on Keystone.
What was that? What?
In math?
They all do well in 7th grade math for your high flyers, but I believe it was North last year. Yeah.
How many kids took the exam?
I don't know the number, but 100%. They all are in
Yeah.
like the 90s or high 80s, but still.
It's just a challenge looking out where you can see, okay, all your kids that were taking it in middle school are your kids that are really good.
Right.
So that looks great, and then all your kids are taking it in ninth grade, but the kids who might be
I would
struggling.
expect.
Yeah, so it's hard to compare apples to apples, we don't really have that. But other assessments we have, just taking a look at the NOCTI, last year, there were 58 kids that took the NOCTI exam. Now, that is across all programs, so that, that's not just in one particular program. 100% of those students achieved a score of advanced or competent. So the NOCTI is advanced, competent, or basic are the 3 levels you can get. And the way it's reported to the state, though, or the way the state reports our scores, if you go into the Future Ready Index, is to really look at the percent of your graduates that were able to earn an advanced on an industry-related exam. So our students in 2023, 6.6% of graduates were able to earn an advance on that.
So they don't have to do
They don't have to,
that.
nope.
So it's only small.
Yep, so they're gonna be a very small group of kids, only those kids who are in a program at the tech school, and only those that are taking the exam.
But that's a very impressive data point right
It's
there.
fantastic,
Every single kid scored it.
fantastic.
Do we track how they do after they graduate, or employment or anything?
That's much harder to do.
Well,
That's
I
what
know
Megan
it's
was
hard.
asking forever.
That's much harder data to get, and I think that really comes down to, we have to develop something through like the alumni group,
Mhm.
because we can't capture that data.
Because that's really I mean, it's great to pass the test, but
Mhm.
their objective is to be successful.
Yeah.
I know, I'm not saying we can do that, but
Right.
certainly.
It would be great to know.
Through the tech school, they could do surveys, they have.
Maybe through Naviance, we could issue surveys.
Yeah, the senior
Like-
survey lets them know kids'
That's true
intentions.
testing for
Yeah.
the success of the program.
Next, we're gonna look at AP data. One of the questions I think is, what are the AP courses? We have most of the AP courses that are offered. We are going to be going and adding an additional AP course next year. So you see all those are ones that we have. So you'll see human geography, we're gonna be adding that next year. Physics C, which we have this year, will actually be split into 2 courses next year. It's always been 2 exams, physics, mechanics, and electricity and magnetism, but they're actually gonna be turned into 2 courses next year. So we'll have 2 courses instead of 1, and it needs to be 2 courses. It's a lot in there. That's calculus-based physics for engineers.
So they were taking a 1-year course
For 2
with
exams.
2 exams, and now they're
Yes.
gonna have to take 2-year course, 2 different.
And they're also gonna be in the block next year, which is why that's
They can-
taking place.
Oh.
Yep. Yeah, physics is one where there's actually 4 different exams, physics 1, physics 2, and physics C, and electricity and mechanics.
How were the pass rates on that course?
They're always excellent.
Okay, so it was working.
Yeah, it is, it's, I mean, it's probably the most challenging course that we have. It's really, really hard. There's no other way to say it. And so it's not a huge number of kids that take that. Those are kids that are generally going to go on to be engineers, and that's a high level exam. The only things we're not offering are the other languages, pretty much like Italian,
AP Latin,
Japanese.
Mandarin.
And there's a comparative government.
Comparative government.
We don't have.
Economics.
So,
And economics,
German.
yeah.
Oh, we
So
don't have.
I don't see it.
so how do we stack up with that as far as, how many
I mean, we
available?
have almost all of them except for those.
Except for, so
Those
it's a high
new.
percentage.
Yeah, oh, very high, yeah.
So it's a good start, so we're rolling out
Yeah.
AP Human Geography.
Yeah, like,
and
there's
then-
technically 38 different exams, but
Okay.
like 3 of them are, if you look at art, there's art like 2D art, 3D art, so and drawing.
Studio,
But the kids can do all of those in that one course.
We're at 27.
AP Studio Art.
Okay.
So how do the kids do? They do very, very well. We've had the highest number of exams this past year. 734, 721 students taking AP exams, that's our highest number. Percent earning a 3 or higher, 3 is a passing score, 350, that's our highest number yet, and percent students with a 3 or better was 83.1% last year, which is excellent. So my hope is that next year we'll be adding additional students, additional exams, and maintaining that same high level with the addition of human geography, which that's gonna be, we could have 9th graders could take that one.
All 4 grades are.
All, yeah, so I think that's one that could be very popular.
It is, there's already 5 sections.
Oh, there's
Five
five.
sections.
Oh,
Oh, excellent.
Yep, that's great.
So this is another one where it's helpful to know how we compare to other schools in our region, not statewide, as far as test scores, and because it comes back to the discussion on, I hate to say it, rankings. Right?
Mhm.
These all play important roles,
Yeah.
and I don't know how much this contributes to it, but it's nice to know if we're doing better than Central Bucks or an average of some of the schools. So.
The
Like
College
national-
Board will report state averages and national averages.
Which
And
we
I
always
think-
do well, right?
Absolutely, and I think when you're talking about rankings, adding more AP coursework will do nothing but help our rankings. To have that college readiness, and this is
Yeah, our
excellent.
percent, part of it is what percent of your graduating class has taken at least one AP.
course.
And so that factor alone, adding additional AP courses is gonna help us. Nationally, we do very well in terms of percent scoring 3 or higher. You know, 83%, the average last year was 62% in the nation.
Well, I understand it, so we look good, but that doesn't mean we're doing well in our area.
Yeah.
And keep
Mhm.
coming back to that. I think it's important to figure out how we shape
Stack
up.
up with everything.
Yeah, not just the county, not
Mhm.
just the state, because we always say, well, we're doing well, but that doesn't, to me, that's not enough. The other thing I always look at is everybody in the public looks at the rankings, whether we like it or not.
Yes.
So it behooves us to understand what's in it and maybe pick one and say, we're gonna base it, this is what we're gonna, and look at those issues and how we stack up and maybe drive some improvement through that. I mean, I hate to do that, but everybody looks at the rankings and we don't necessarily like them, but
And when someone's on Zillow or one of those other
Mhm.
ones, they're looking at how the schools stack up. That's-
yeah, and I don't think we understand them completely because there's so many different rankings. I
Various
would rather
methodologies
I would rather
that can
pick
be-
one and
Go with that.
go with that and ignore the other ones, but at least understand where we lack in those. So I think we're better school than what we get ranked for.
That's everything.
I would totally just random looking at AP courses, and I was like, I wonder if there's AP courses for PE and like kinesiology, things like that. And it looks like they've been trying to. I guess they say the best way to do it is look for colleges that offer some of those courses and partnering up. But I'm like, man, just thinking of all the health and wellness and things going on, I don't know if that's something we ever looked into, since we do a lot of dual enrollment with the local colleges. I don't know.
The College Board is sometimes very slow to act.
Right, and maybe they won't approve it. That's what it says
And
too, like
they-
they have to approve it.
I mean, and they go back and forth on stuff. They made modifications to a number of the exams. They've changed science significantly. But a lot of that comes from the universities.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the university professors sit on those committees,
Right.
those development committees, and they have, they don't ask high school teachers and school districts. They really get that from the universities. When there's big fundamental changes at universities and how they're taught, that's when they change them.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it comes down to also, unfortunately, districts, we're dependent upon what those colleges will offer or will allow. So some universities, you can't get credit for certain things. Psychology is one, it's a very popular class, but colleges like, that's a course for them that they can give kids and not, you might not
Right,
get credit for
sure.
it 'cause they want to- Yeah, you know what I mean? It's a moneymaker for them, basically. They know that's a course that they're offering.
Yeah. One other thing I just wanted to say is I love this slide, but I don't know if it's in here, the one that you shared, but the one at the beginning, how you talk about like all the different pathways with Keystone and how there's like alternate pathways as well. I think that's great that you're sharing that. I think I only bumped into myself because my oldest is getting older and I was looking into different opportunities and I didn't realize like if you're a tech student and you take the NACD
Sure.
that you don't have to technically pass the Keystone. Like some students just really struggle with taking tests.
Act 158 does allow multiple pathways
Right.
for graduation.
Even like co-op, like it blew my mind. Like
It's very hard for me to even describe how many there are.
Right.
I think there's 13 or something like that.
But do the parents know?
I don't think that's like I just bumped
Can we
into one.
simplify it?
Yeah.
That could be something that, we can add to our program of studies, Act 158, so that some historical context. The Keystone exams were going to be the only graduation requirement. There was even talk of having civics component to the Keystone exam, and then PDE and the legislature passed the policy Act 158, which provides multiple pathways to graduation. So a student can take the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. They can take, which is the ASVAB exam for military, that you would take prior to entering the military or armed forces. You also have the NACD exam, so for our tech school kids. So if a student didn't achieve proficiency on one of the Keystone exams, they have these alternatives. So the NACD exam, scoring a 3 or higher, taking dual enrollment courses and other opportunities for kids to reach across the finish line with respect to graduation, which is great. So if I hear you correctly, we need to do a better job of communicating these various pathways to parents, and that's
That was
something we can
something
certainly do.
that data coach position was doing though. She
We
was
did.
going
It's
through
in the
and,
program of studies and we did a presentation.
yeah.
Mhm.
The counselors have it, they did their work on it, we could do more.
Mhm.
Yeah, like even when the guidance counselors meet with the students, I don't know if that's part of like the discussions or.
Yes, we are working
Yeah.
so hard on getting every student past that line, and there's so many different ways that they can get it, there's a
Right.
huge spreadsheet, and there's a lot of work in the counseling office.
Because, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, because the way that I read it is, if you did opt your child out of the Keystone because they can take that other pathway, it's not just necessarily if you don't pass the Keystone and then you have to take the alternate pathway. My thinking was that you could take an alternate pathway if you felt like the Keystone test was not maybe in your best to take that pathway. Am I
The state still
misinterpreting?
requires you have to take the test.
But there is opt-out options.
Only religious opt-out. I know that people don't, they just say they're not doing it and there's nothing we can do about it, but the state still requires that you take it unless your parent wrote a letter and followed the procedures for religious opt-out.
Through the state.
Yes.
That's all PDE.
Yeah, so you have to take it, but it's not a requirement to graduate though,
Correct.
is where you're
Right.
So-
going.
They have a different.
Right.
But we have found that the easiest pathway is if a student gets proficient or advanced on their Keystone exam.
Mhm.
And they don't have to.
Yeah, and also, I mean, it does
Yeah.
hurt us as a district in terms of how our scores look. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
And
Do you want to explain the opt-out, how that adversely impacts?
yeah, when your students are opting out, in fact, if we unfortunately had to go through this process during COVID, we had a lot of opt-outs, and all of those counted actually as zeros for us, basically.
Right.
And it's not good.
And that impacts your future ready index and
Right.
just.
It
We have
impacts
to write our
everything.
legislators, we gotta get a new system, how to get money.
I only think that they would make it more complicated.
Possibly.